Alright everybody, here we go for the last time for our Kaladesh Limited set review. My name is Alex, this is the EOT Newsflash. These are all of the artifact cards, and I do mean all of them because there are a bunch. There are 51 of them. That is at least 20 more than every other color in the set. So you're going to see these a lot in your limited pools, your draft packs, so we're not going to waste any time. 4-point scale, 1's the unplayables, 2 of this is your filler, 3 are your premium spells and removal, 4 are your bombs. Let's go. First up, we have Accomplished Automaton, 7 colorless mana for an 7 generic mana. I'm sorry, it's not colorless mana. Artifact creature construct. It's a 5/7 with Fabricate, so you can make either a 1/1 creature or put a +1/+1 counter on it. Hexplate Golem was underwhelming back in Scar's draft. This guy is no different. I think there's just better things you can do for this kind of mana, unless you're playing a really slow, grindy control deck, and this is kind of your top end, then you maybe have an excuse for playing it. As it stands, though, I can't see this guy being better than a 1.5. Almost filler, but even then, really, really bad filler of that. Next one we've got is Aether Flux Reservoir. 4 generic mana for an artifact that whenever you cast a spell, you gain 1 life for each spell you've cast this turn. Pay 50 life. Aether Flux Reservoir deals 50 damage to target creature or player. Who the hell's gaining 50 life in a game of Limited? Seriously. Seriously, though. This card's not very good. Unless you are being able to cast multiple spells in a single turn, you must have a very low curve deck. At that point, you're getting a little bit of advantage of it, but that second line of text might not even be there. And if you're just paying 4 mana for an artifact that's just going to gain you an incremental amount of life over the course of a game, don't even go close to this one. This is a solid 1, unless you've just got, I don't even know. What kind of, no, okay, almost a 0 practically. This is almost unplayable, I would say, in this case. Next one we have is Aetherworks Marvel, 4 mana for a legendary artifact. Whenever a permanent you control is put into a graveyard, you gain 1 energy. You can tap it and pay 6 energy. Look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may cast a card from among them without paying its mana cost. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Now this card is really, really nuts. If anything that goes to the graveyard, so the puzzle knots, creatures, artifacts that just randomly just get destroyed, and like anything that goes to the graveyard and for any reason is going to charge this thing up. And eventually you're going to look at a lot of cards and fight them to put in the battlefield. Unless you're not unless you're really focused on an energy-based deck, I can't see this being all that relevant. But if you are, holy cow, this thing goes absolutely berserk. Give it a 3 because it is a little bit difficult to get off. Things need to be constantly going into the graveyard, so that might be a bit of a trick for some decks. As it stands, though, once this thing gets churning and you're looking at more cards, wow, super powerful effect. I would say that you want to activate this twice before you really get your investment back into this card. But when you can hit that threshold, boom, card is amazing. Solid 3 for me. Would happily take this perfect pick in a draft and just draft around it and just go nuts with it. Next one we have is Animation Module. 1 generic mana for an artifact that whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are placed on a permanent you control, you may pay 1 generic mana. If you do, create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token. You can pay 3 and choose a counter on target permanent or player. Give that permanent or player another counter of that kind. So I'm going to start with that bottom line of text. Energy counters count. They work. You can make more of them. This is proliferate, essentially. +1/+1 counters can be multiplied. Not multiplied, but just added on. Planeswalker loyalty can be added on. Like that's what that line of text is referring to. Any kind of counter that's on any permanent or just, or player because of energy, you can put them on there. If you're playing, modern, this has infect counters. This is going to add, I imagine it adds experience counters and commanders. Well, this card has a lot of very far spread applications. I would love to see this thing do something in a different format other than limited. As it stands right here, I'm going to give it a 2.5 just because as the game goes longer, you're going to have a surplus of mana. And if you're the kind of deck that wants to have a number of counters being put on your creatures, you're going to have mana to pay X left over to pay for that activated ability right there. So this thing's going to start churning out value very, very slowly. But then as the game goes on and progresses further, you're going to have a lot of extra value just add on because of this one little artifact. Super, super good. It's a bit of a build around me, but once you're there, I think you're in great shape. 2.5 for me. Next one we have is the Aradara Express. This is our first vehicle actually to review here. This is a 5 generic artifact vehicle, 8/6 with menace, crew 4. Now, in order to crew something, you have to tap any number of creatures you control with power total together 4 or more. So 2 2/2s, a 3 and a 3/1, a 3 power guy and a 1 power guy, or just a 10 power guy, whatever. As long as it equals 4 or more, you can make this thing be a vehicle, and that counts for blocking as well. That kind of realized, and I guess that's kind of a cool thing to do. As it stands, though, this thing's really underwhelming. For 5 mana, you've got to tap a good number of your team to even get this thing to attack with. You might be able to close out a game, but board states get clogged up really quickly. And if there's a case where you tap some of your guys, let's say you tap a 2 power guy and two 1 power guys to crew this and then attack, and they bounce it, you're left defenseless all of a sudden. And that's where this vehicle mechanic gets really sketchy at sometimes, because you can just walk into a situation where you go for an attack and you've tapped some guys and you have no more defense. So there are better vehicles than this. I'm giving this a 1.5. It's barely, and I do mean barely, playable. So keep that in mind. 8/6 is huge, but just remember, you're tapping a lot of resources over your guys to make this thing work. And if it goes wrong, it's going to go really wrong. Next one we have is Ballista Charger. 5 generic mana, 6/6. And whenever it attacks, it deals 1 damage to a target creature or player. Crews for 3. The difference between crewing 4 and 3, it's obviously only 1, but that is a huge difference in limited. That's only 1 guy, perhaps. There's a bunch of 3 power guys in this set that you can just easily just tap it and you're good to go. The added benefit of being able to attack, ping a creature, and potentially kill it as well, that's huge for this guy. I like it a lot more than I do the Aradara Express. It's the same kind of mana cost, but the value you're getting off of this thing and the ability to crew it for 1 less pushes it much, much higher, which makes me give this a 2.25. It's pretty good, but that's about it. I feel like there's another point for that one, but no, that was it. All right, next one we have is Bastion Mastodon. Now, there's a full cycle of these common artifact creatures that have an activated ability of the color. And they all got about the same rating for me, honestly. 5 generic mana, 4/5, pay a white, give a vigilance at the end of turn. There's better things to do with 5 mana. And even if you're in white, the upside doesn't that much higher than this one. So I'm not a big fan of this guy. He gets a 2. He's decent filler, and that's about it. Next one we've got is Bomat. Yeah. Bomat. God. Wizards. Bomat. What the hell? Bomat Bizarre Barge. Triple B. 4 generic mana gets you a 5/5 artifact vehicle. Whenever it enters the battlefield, draw a card. That's sweet. Cruise for 3. Again, the difference between 4 and 3 is huge. It replaces itself. It's a 5/5. It's going to start rumbling real quick with some of your opponents. This is a really solid vehicle right here. I almost call it an equipment. 2.25, same as the Charger, just that extra little advantage you're getting off of it, and the little bit less, and the 1 point of crewing less to require to crew it makes it all the difference on these vehicles. So keep that in mind when you're building your decks. The ones that take a lot to crew, be wary of them. Be really wary. Next one we have is Bomat Courier. 1 generic mana gets you an artifact creature construct. It has haste. Whenever it attacks, exile the top card of your library face down. You may pay 1 red, discard your hand, sacrifice Bomat Courier, put all cards exiled with Bomat Courier into their owner's hands. It's a 1/1. There ain't no limited deck that wants this. This is a 1. Almost a 0. Almost unplayable unless you are in the most hyper-aggressive of red decks in draft. And even then, just don't do it. Next, we've got a returning favorite from Magic Origins, Chief of the Foundry, 3 generic mana, artifact creature construct. It's a 2/3 that gives other artifact creatures you control +1/+1. Lords are sweet. What more can I say here? Solid 3. Next one we have is the first of our Puzzle Knot cycle. This is Cogworker's Puzzle Knot. 2 generic mana. That when it enters the battlefield, you create a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token. You can pay 1 white to create a second one of those tokens. 4 mana for 2 1/1s is crap. Don't touch this one. unless you are in the most just recursive of black-white artifact decks, there is no value to be gained over this one. There are better things to do with your mana than trying to make some artifacts. Just leave this one on the sideboard completely. 1.5, and that's only if you're in that heavily recursive black-white artifact deck. Next one we have is Consulate Skygate. 2 generic mana, 0/4 wall, defender reach. Again, don't touch this at all. You can't even crew vehicles. What's the point? 1. No, 0. Don't play this guy at all. Unless you are just in the most grindy control deck. And even then, just stop. Stop. Close the Sky Gates. Walk away from it forever. Next one we've got is Cultivator's Caravan. It's a 3 generic mana artifact vehicle. You can tap it to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Cruise for 3. There's that 3 number again. Super crucial on these vehicles. Keep that in mind when you're looking at your limited pools. Keep it in mind. It's also a 5/5. 3 mana artifact rocks are great for mana acceleration. This is perfectly acceptable. And once you get to the point in the game where you no longer need that acceleration, start humping in. Turn this guy sideways. It might look a little goofy. It's kind of a wagony thingy. Yeah, but other than that, start turning sideways. This card's great. Gave this one a solid 3. Very, very good one. Next one we have is Deadlock Trap. 3 generic mana artifact, enters the battlefield tapped. When it enters the battlefield, gain 2 energy. Tap it, pay 1 energy, tap target creature or planeswalker. Its activated abilities can't be activated this turn. This is the first instance that a planeswalker is actually being referred to as tapped, if I'm not mistaken. So this is kind of cool, I guess. And Chandra and Nissa are in some deep shit here. So I don't know what's going on in this picture, but they're in trouble. Let's go break them out, I guess. I wouldn't be too crazy about playing this one unless you're able to create a lot of energy every turn. At least at 1 energy every turn is the way to make this thing good. 3 mana artifacts and only getting 2 shots out of it isn't great. Tumble Magnet back from Scar's Mirrodin block had 3 counters on it, and that card was insane. This is no Tumble Magnet, and this thing's rare for crying out loud. And it even taps planeswalkers, but that's whatever at this point. If you can make the energy every turn, I can see this being pretty decent. But as it stands, it's just pretty decent filler. Maybe you board this in if you need to keep one of your opponent's big creatures tapped down. But we've seen tappers like this. Think back to Abyssinian Pilgrim. Or no, Sergardian Priest from Shadows of Innistrah's block. 1 mana to tap down anything that was a creature. And this is worse. And it's rare. Whatever. Next one we have is Decoction Module. 2 generic mana for an artifact. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain an energy. Sweet. Pay 4 and tap it. Return target creature you control to its owner's hand. If it makes energy, sweet. Play it again. Make more energy. Get energy off of this. Awesome. If you are in the energy deck, this is something that you want really, really, really highly. 2.25, just because that activated ability is a little bit of a cost, it's really hard to continuously hold up mana to activate this every turn. And just playing the same creature over and over and over and getting a little bit of value might not be worth it unless your deck can really abuse that energy. 2.25, in the right decks I can see is going high as maybe a 2.5. Next one we've got is Demolition Stomper. 6 generic mana for a 10/7 vehicle artifact. Can't be blocked by creatures with 2 power or less. Cruise for 5. What do you guys think about this one? It sucks. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. Good. 10 points for you. Excellent. So, like the I guess it was the Auradar Express, having to be crewed by 5 power of creatures. That's a lot of guys that you are tapping to get this thing going, and for them just to bounce it or kill it or just anything, and just because it can't be blocked by creatures with 2 power or less does not make it good. Board states get stalled out because there are bigger creatures than 2s. There are 3/4s and 5/5s and 9/8s. This thing is never going to get through except in the most rare of situations, I'm pretty sure. It could be better than it looks, but again, that 5 crew activation is massive and not something I would want to be paying for ever, I don't think. I'm moving this one in the sideboard, leaving it across the room in my draft pod. I don't even care. I'm not going to touch it. Demolition Stomper gets a 2 just for being pure filler and not even good filler at that. Leave it. Next one we have is the Duke Hara Peafowl. 4 generic mana to get a 2/4 artifact bird. You can pay 1 blue and it gains flying until the end of turn. Only play this in blue. And when you are, it's a solid 2.25. This is a great piece of filler. It's an evasive body with a nice, body to block with. That's fantastic. And that's exactly what you want when you're playing blue. Pick this guy highly when you're drafting blue decks and go to town with him. Super solid. I would almost call this a premium common for that color, but make sure you're in blue. Don't play otherwise if you're not. Next one we have is Dynavolt Tower. 3 generic mana gets you an artifact. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, you get 2 energy. Tap it and pay 5 energy. Dynavolt Tower deals 3 damage to target creature or player. Probably don't want to play this in limited. Sealed, that is. Your usual sealed decks run very few actual instants and sorceries. If you listen to the show before, that's something we really, really emphasize. You're all about creatures when you're playing sealed. In draft, though, I pick this thing, pick one, pack one. I'm going all in on spell deck. I'm going to go nuts with this thing. So for sealed, it's a 1. For draft, I can see this being as high as a 3 because the ceiling on this thing is as high as you can make it. Awesome card. Great. Love the flavor on this one as well. Next one we've got is Eager Construct. 2 generic mana gets you a 2/2 artifact creature construct. Enters the battlefield. Each player scries 1. And they get to draw that card first. Bad filler is bad filler, no matter how you look at it. Some decks are going to want a generic little 2/2 bear, but at that point, it's not much better than that. I would leave this one on the sideboard unless you're really scrounging for low drops and you're really, really aggressive to take advantage of that ability. But other than that, not very good. Solid 2 for me. Next one we have is Electrostatic Pummeler. 3 generic mana gets you an artifact creature construct. It's a 1/1. When it enters the battlefield, you get 3 energy. You can pay 3 energy, and it gets +X until the end of turn, where X is its power. Now, if your opponent attacks with this thing and has any mana up, and you decide not to block, one of 2 things is going to happen. You're going to take 1 damage. Or you're going to take like 40 because they've got pump spells galore and enough energy to just destroy you in 1 shot. I'm going to lean towards more of the latter, of the former. This thing, especially for 3 mana, it's just not where I want to be with an aggressive deck. I'd have pump spells up, I'm having to hold up mana, and if this thing gets, bounced or removed instantly, you look really goofy for wasting all that mana. I would leave this thing behind. Not even good filler, 1.5 at best for me. Next one we've got is Fabrication Module. It's a 3-drop artifact. Whenever you gain 1 or more energy, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. That's a great value right there. Pay 4 mana and tap it, and you get an energy. Again, this is like the decotation module. Paying that activated mana cost is a little bit strict, but you're not having to bounce a creature and you're not having to replay it either and waste the mana again unless the game's just gone really, really long. Just getting that extra energy to start paying for other abilities, making your creatures bigger. I can see this one going really well in just about any deck that wants to care about energy. Give this one a solid 2.5 for me. I like this card a lot because it feels like another really good build around the uncommon, and there's a good number of those in this set, and I'm really excited to see what they can do in limited games. The next one we have is Filigree Familiar. It's a 3 generic mana artifact creature, Fox. It's a 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, gain 2 life. When it dies, draw a card. 3. Awesome card. Next one, Fireforger's Puzzle Knot. 2 generic mana artifact. Enters the battlefield, deals damage to a creature or player. You may pay 2 and red and sacrifice it. Does the same thing. This is trash. Don't play these puzzle knots. I actually give it a 0. 1 damage is never going to be enough in any situation. Next one we have is Fleetwheel Cruiser. 4 generic mana for an artifact vehicle. It's a 5/3. Has trample and haste. Whenever it enters the battlefield, it becomes an artifact creature to the end of turn. This is the only one that does that. So you play it, and it just shoots out of the starting line and just attacks. Cruise for 2. 2 is cheap. 2 is good. This guy is also very good. Solid 2.5. This is going to trade up a couple of times until they decide to finally take care of this and block it. But this is good for a good number of points of damage. I can see these being as high as a 3 in some more aggressive decks. I like this card a lot. Very, very good vehicle for here. Next one we have is Foundry Inspector. 3 generic mana gets you a 3/2 artifact creature construct that lets your artifact spells you cast cost 1 generic mana less. Cost reduction effects are awesome. This guy gets a pretty solid 3 for me. He's right up there with the Chief of the Foundry. They go great in the same deck, which is practically any deck in this format, because there's always going to be artifacts in your deck. Love this guy right here. Just making your creatures cheaper. Fantastic. I would take this guy very, very highly in drafts, and definitely play him in my sealed decks as long as I've got a good number of artifact spells that will be supported by him. So, solid 3 for me. And next one we have is Girapur Warrior. 4 generic mana artifacts. Each player may play an additional land on each of his or her turns. Wow! At the beginning of each player's upkeep, if that player has no cards in hand, that player draws 3 cards. Wow! Oh, it's each player. There's no synergy. This is symmetric, and you can't break this? Yeah, don't play this one either. 0. Do not touch this one. Next one we have is Glass Blower's Puzzle Knot. 2 generic mana, enters the battlefield, scry 2, get 2 energy, pay 2 blue, and do the same thing. Again, these puzzle knots are not good. This one gets a bit of an asterisk next to it. In draft, if you are in the blue energy deck and you want to constantly have energy, the nice thing is that nobody else is going to want these. Let's keep this between you and I here, yeah? Nobody's going to touch these. You're going to get all of them, or as many as you might possibly need, and not have to worry about fighting over them in their early picks. So, pro tip right there. Gets a little bit better in the blue energy decks for draft, but other than that, I'm not going to touch this for sealed. 1.5 for me, just because of this draft application. Next one we have is Inventor's Goggles. 1 generic mana gets you an artifact equipment. Creates a creature +1/+2. Whenever an artificer enters the battlefield under your control, you may attach Inventor's Goggles to it and equips for 2. That's actually not a bad rate for equipment. I typically stay away from equipment in limited, but this is one I can see being decent. But even then, I know Justin's crazy about this card. He was split in constructed, so, you know, maybe it's better than I think it is, but as it stands, I look at it as filler, pure and simple. Give it a solid 2 right here. Next one we have is Iron League Steed. 4 generic mana for a construct, 2/2, has haste or fabricate 1. I will guarantee you that 99% of the time you will make a 3/3 haster and start beating face with this guy. Awesome. I think it's yeah, it's a Rhino. Sweet. Yeah, I like this guy a lot. This guy gets a definite 2.5 for me. One of, I think, the premier fabricate creatures in this set, other than the colored ones, of course. Next one we have is Key to the City. 2 generic mana artifact. Tap it, discard a card. Up to 1 target creature can't be blocked this turn. Whenever Key to the City becomes untapped, you may pay 2. If you do, draw a card. This thing's gonna get you so much value in the states where the board gets really clogged up and you can't beat through anymore. This is your key, literally, to victory. And being able to pitch extra lands you've got, drawing extra cards. First pick this bad boy. I gave it a 3. This is almost a 4 in terms of power level. But there are some decks who just probably, you know, won't be able to take advantage of this. This is an awesome, awesome card. Take this highly in draft, play it in your sealed decks, and this is how you break board states wide open with this one little key. Awesome card here. Definitely play this one a lot. Next one we have is Metal Spinner's Puzzle Knot. 2 generic mana gets you an artifact that when it enters the battlefield, you may draw a card and you lose 1 life. Pay 2 and do it again. Draw a card, lose a life. I like this one a little bit more than all the others because just drawing cards is pretty decent. Again, this goes well in the black-white artifact recursion deck. Other than that, it's not really all that great. At best, this is decent filler and pretty bad filler. So I give it a 2 just because I like it a little bit more than the rest of them, and the ceiling on the other ones is pretty low. Yeah, not great. I would say that if you are going to play these puzzle knots, make sure you can at least activate the other half of them. Paying 2 mana to draw a card and lose a life probably isn't a great starting rate. And late in the game, if you can actually fire this off and maybe get some extra value out of it, then you're okay. But other than that, be really careful with these puzzle knots. They're really deceptively weak, but they do look quite appealing. And again, like that blue one where I mentioned that you're going to get a lot of these in your drafts. If you're in the deck that wants it, you're in pretty good shape right there. But as it stands, it's just a 2 and just pretty weak filler if you ask me. Next one we have Metalwork Colossus, 11 generic mana, artifact creature construct, 10/10, cost X less to cast, where X is the total converted mana cost of non-creature artifacts you control. Sacrifice 2 artifacts, return it from your graveyard to your hand. So you're going to want to have, a couple of, just generic artifacts sitting around, some of the modules perhaps, the puzzle knots. So what you're shooting for here is about a 7-drop. If you can at least get 4 converted mana costs of artifacts on the battlefield, that's where this guy really starts to shine. And the fact that he crews everything by himself is pretty sweet, but at that point, you're not turning him sideways for what reason? You tell me. Metalwork Colossus gets a solid 3 for me. Next one we have is Multiform Worker. This is a 5-drop artifact construct. Whenever it enters the battlefield, you get 3 energy. You may pay 1 energy, and it gains your choice of Flying, Vigilance, or Lifelink until the end of turn. Pay an energy. Multiform Worker gets +2, -2, or -1, +2 till the end of turn. And again, it's a 3/3. If you are in a deck that can generate energy every single turn, this thing's going to get nuts real quick. Give it Flying and start beating face. Enough said. Solid 3 here for me. Almost a 3.5. Just because the constant energy consumption is really, really rough in some cases. But it could be worth as much as a 5-point lifespan in some games. So I like this card a lot. Next one we have is Non-Rum Cobra. 2 generic mana gets you an artifact creature snake. It's a 2/1, and for 1 green, it gains Death Touch until the end of turn. This is a 1 in any other color other than green. Once you're in green, this thing shoots way up in power level, as it's able to trade with practically everything in this set. This is a solid 2.5 if you're in green. Otherwise, don't really mess with this one at all. I don't like it all that much. Next one we have is Oval Chase Dragster. 4 generic mana, artifact vehicle. It's a 6/1, trample haste, cruise for 1. This is going to take some damage, some life out of your opponent, that's for sure. Crewing for 1 is a super sweet cost. It's your smaller guys that are maybe kind of, lost their value as the game goes on. Draw this, play it, humph. Very, very solid right here. I gave the Oval Chase Dragster a 2.5. Aggressive decks are going to love the crap out of this one. Next one we have is the Panharmonicon. Right. 4 generic mana, if an artifact or creature entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. When it's great, but you're going to jump through some hoops about this small to get this thing to go off, and I give it this big of a grade. It's a 0. Next one we have is Perpetual Timepiece. 2 generic mana gets you an artifact that allows you to tap and put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard, and you may pay 2 to exile Perpetual Timepiece and shuffle any number of target cards from your graveyard into your library. This is the definition of wheel spinning here. Unless you, like we mentioned before, that black-white artifact recursion deck, this is going to do literally nothing. And I couldn't help but just give it a 0 because it also looks like a 0. Fancy that. Next one we've got is the Prakhata Pillar Bug. My God, these names are getting me. 3 generic mana for a common 2/3 artifact creature insect. Pay a black and it gains lifelink till the end of turn. Again, these common artifact creatures that with an artifact with a converted with a activated cost of their color identity, just kind of really underwhelming. There are better ways to spend 3 mana than getting a 2/3 that can lifelink sometimes. Decent filler, and at that, it's not even going to do that job either. So I give it a solid 2, though. Next one we have is a card that I am super excited to play because I can remember finding this card back when it was originally launched in Zendikar. I believe this was in Rise of the Eldrazi. This was a Super important card in my Grixis Tezzeret deck back from that standard season. This is Prophetic Prism. 2 generic mana. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. You can tap it and 1 other mana and make any mana of your color and add it to your mana pool. It's common as well. It's going to go on all of your decks that have, just necessary mana activations on certain things. It's a great way to just fix your mana in some cases. I like this card a whole lot, and I'm really glad to see it come back in this set, and that art is fantastic. Foils are going to be looking super fine. Gave Prophetic Prism a 2.5. Great card. I think this is going to belong in a lot of decks in these limited formats. Next one we have is Renegade Fighter. 3 generic mana. Whenever it attacks, it gains +1/+1 and trample till the end of turn. Cruise for 2, and it's a 4/3 vehicle. This one is miles better than all of the other common vehicles we've seen so far. It cruises for 2, and it becomes a 5/4 immediately. Like, this thing is going to rumble real hard, and this is a great way to make your less valuable guys you put on this early turn so you are able to stick around much more threatening. This card is really solid for the vehicle decks that are going to be out there. I like this one a lot. This one gets a solid 3 for me. Top tier artifact common of this set. I'm going to call it right now. Next one we have is Scrap Heat Scrounger. 2 generic mana for a 3/2 artifact creature construct. It cannot block, but for 1 black, you can exile another creature card from your graveyard and return it from your graveyard to the battlefield. That is nuts. In super aggressive black decks, especially in draft, being able to get this thing back out consistently every single turn if it dies is awesome. If you just have a bunch of cheap little guys that you're just throwing away and this guy's going with them, awesome card right here. Gave it a 2.5 just because it can't block and it's a little bit restrictive in the decks it can go in. But when it's in the right deck, this is an absolute all-star of a creature. Love this guy. Really cool. And that art is just super sweet. All right, next we have Self-Assembler. 5 generic mana gets you a 4/4 assembly worker. When Self-Assembler enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an assembly worker creature card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library. I'm pretty sure this is the only assembly worker in the entire set, which is pretty good because it goes against itself. So a 5 mana 4/4 that goes against another 5 mana 4/4 that can get another 5 mana 4/4. You see where I'm going with this. So this is the trick on this one. The first one gets a 2. When you have 2 in your deck, it goes up to a 2.25. When you have 3 in your deck, solid 2.5. Any more than that, and your curve looks like garbage. Only play 3 of these guys. But once you have enough, they get really good. I like this guy quite a bit for being a common. Next one we have is Sky Skiff. 2 generic mana, artifact vehicle. It's a 2/3 flyer with crew 1. Again, cheap crew is good. Say it with me. Cheap crew is good. Yes. Mantra. Make that your mantra for the next couple of days for the pre-release. Cheap crew is good. It flies. It's awesome. I can't say really any more than that. This is a solid 3. This is another really powerful common. We're up there with the Renegade Fighter as one of the best vehicles in the set, particularly at common, because it doesn't hold a candle to Sky Sovereign Console Flagship. 5 generic mana gets you a 6/5 flying legendary artifact vehicle. Whenever Sky Sovereign, I'm going to mess this up a million times, Sky Sovereign Console Flagship enters the battlefield or attacks, it deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker an opponent control. So it can't go to the face like Inferno Titan could, but this is a monster of a vehicle, and it crews for 3. And we said crew for 3 is good. This thing is nuts. This is a 4, no questions asked. Next one we have is Smuggler's Copter, and probably the best vehicle in the entire set that has the best shot of being constructed playable. This is a 2 generic mana artifact vehicle, 3/3 flyer. Whenever it attacks or blocks, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card, and it crews for 1. 1. That's cheap. Crew is good. Say it with me. Cheap crew is good. Solid 4 right here. This guy is awesome. Play it in practically every deck that you build. Next one we have is Snare Thopter. The kits keep coming. 4 generic mana, artifact creature Thopter, 3/2 flyer with haste. 3. This guy's good. 3. Solid 3. Next one we have Torch Gauntlet, 2 generic mana, artifact equipment, gives a equipped creature +2/+0 and equips for 2. Trash. 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 Gets a 1. And I don't want to give it a 1 either. I want to give it a 0. But it's got the most minute playability. Next one we have is the Weld Fast Monitor. 3 generic mana, gets you a 3/2 lizard. Pay a red, give it menace. Again, these are these activated mana costs of a color. And they're just not very good. Like, this guy's at least decent. 3/2s aren't anything to scoff at in most cases. I like him a little bit better. And when you're playing red, giving it menace, not embarrassing, but still not very good. Next one we have is Whirler Maker. 3 generic mana, pay 4 and tap it to create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature with token with flying. If the game goes long, and I do mean long, this will take over the game by itself. As it stands, this is probably just a 1. I wouldn't be going on my way to play this thing unless you just have a way to make the game just go stupidly long, and by that point you are wasting yours and your opponent's time. Don't do that. So, but keep this one on the sideboard. Not very good. Next one we have is Wood Weaver's Puzzle Knot. 2 generic mana for a common artifact. Enters the battlefield, gain 3 life, get 3 energy, pay 2 and a green, sacrifice it, get 3 energy, gain 3 life. Again, Puzzle Knot's not good. Not good. Just not worth it. Solid 1. And the last card in the set, we are here at it. Workshop Assistant, 3 generic mana, gets you an artifact creature construct. When it dies, return another target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. So again, here's that black-white artifact recursion deck. This wants to be in that deck, and probably not a whole lot else. That 1/2 body isn't great, but again, the regrowth ability is enough to make it attractive in some cases that I can see you playing it in a number of decks that have like 1 good artifact, and you just need to hit it back and have a little bit of recursion. So as it stands, I gave this one a 2 just for being pretty solid filler with some decent upside that can actually get you a lot of value as the game goes long. And that's it. The other more cards in the set. We got through all of them, guys. Yeah, give yourself a hand for that one. So, your pre-release is this weekend. I wish you all the best of luck. Let me know in the comments what your favorite card in the set is. What are you most excited to open in the pre-release? Are you doing any drafting? 2-headed Giant. This set looks amazing for Limited. I can't wait to draft it. Can't wait to play my pre-release. I can't wait to see what these cards have an impact on in other formats. It's going to be a great, great set. Wizards knocked out of the park with both vehicles and energy. Fantastic, fantastic set. So don't forget every week that we're going to have new episodes of EOT Newsflash over on MTGCast. You can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, and Twitch. Lots of draft videos coming in, lots of streaming, all kinds of exciting things. Make sure to like and subscribe to the videos, guys. It makes a huge difference. It makes me want to make even more content for you guys. So big thanks to everybody for watching, and we will talk to you guys very, very soon here on the EOT Newsflash. I'm Alex. Later, guys.